A threadbare gray coat nearly cost a man his dignity, his daughter's faith in humanity, and a bank executive her career. The wealthy customers in the marble-lined lobby barely looked up as the single father stood quietly clutching a worn envelope, but the CEO looked directly at him, curled her lip in disgust, and laughed just loudly enough for everyone to hear. She saw only patched sleeves, faded shoes, and tired eyes. What she didn't know was that hidden inside her own bank's private vault, under a confidential numbered account that almost no employee had permission to access, sat more than $500 million legally belonging to the humble man she had just humiliated. If you believe kindness is more valuable than appearances, and that forgiveness and second chances can change lives, please like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel to join our growing community. Every weekday morning, Graham Mercer walked his 9-year-old daughter Clara to school before catching 2 buses across the city. His gray coat had once belonged to his late father, and although the elbows had been carefully patched several times, Graham refused to throw it away. It wasn't because he couldn't replace it. It was because every stitch reminded him of the man who had raised him to measure wealth by character instead of possessions. Since losing his wife Eleanor to a sudden illness 4 years earlier, Graham had poured every ounce of his heart into raising Clara. They lived modestly in a small apartment filled with second-hand furniture, homemade meals, library books, and laughter that somehow survived the hardest days. Few people knew that Graham had once been one of the youngest financial security architects in North America. Years earlier, he had designed a revolutionary vault encryption system that protected enormous institutional fortunes. When the technology was sold to an international banking consortium, Graham quietly received a massive ownership payout worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Instead of chasing luxury, he established charitable trusts, invested conservatively, and locked the remainder inside a confidential numbered vault account requiring extraordinary identification procedures. He intentionally chose to live simply because success had never changed the values his parents taught him. He wanted Clara to grow up believing that compassion mattered more than expensive clothes. That Tuesday morning, Graham carried an official letter informing him that his vault documentation required an updated biometric verification. It was a routine legal procedure that had to be completed in person before the end of the month. He had postponed it for weeks because Clara had been recovering from pneumonia, and every spare hour belonged to her. The headquarters of Ashford National Bank rose high above downtown with polished glass reflecting the afternoon sun. Everything inside shimmered with wealth. Customers in tailored suits crossed marble floors while employees greeted premium clients by name. Graham stepped inside carefully, brushing rainwater from his old coat after a brief daytime shower. He smiled politely at the receptionist and waited his turn without complaint. The receptionist examined his paperwork but frowned at the unfamiliar account classification. Unsure what to do, she contacted senior management. By coincidence, the bank's CEO, Victoria Ellison, had just finished an investor meeting and walked across the lobby surrounded by executives. Victoria had built her reputation on aggressive efficiency. She believed appearances revealed discipline, and discipline revealed success. It was a belief that had slowly hardened into prejudice. When her eyes landed on Graham, she immediately assumed he was another customer hoping to argue about fees or request financial assistance. Before reading the documents, she glanced at his coat and sighed impatiently. Her dismissive smile spread across the lobby as several employees fell silent. She remarked that some people seemed to mistake prestigious banks for charity offices and suggested he might be more comfortable elsewhere. A few uncomfortable laughs escaped from nervous managers eager to impress their CEO. Graham lowered his eyes for a moment, not because he felt ashamed of his coat, but because Clara had once asked why adults sometimes judged strangers without knowing their stories. He had promised her that kindness should never depend on another person's opinion. Without anger, he simply handed Victoria the verification letter. She accepted it carelessly. Then her expression changed. The confidential account number triggered an internal security protocol she recognized immediately. The color drained from her face. This wasn't an ordinary customer. It was one of the institution's highest value vault accounts, protected under extraordinary privacy agreements that even senior executives rarely encountered. Within seconds, security officers approached not to remove Graham, but to escort him respectfully to the executive private banking floor. The lobby fell completely silent. Employees who had laughed moments earlier suddenly stared at Graham with disbelief. Victoria's heartbeat raced. She realized everyone had witnessed her humiliating one of the bank's most significant clients. Yet the deepest embarrassment had nothing to do with the money. It was the realization that she had treated another human being as worthless because of an old coat. Inside the executive office, Graham completed every verification calmly. His fingerprints, retinal scan, encrypted authorization codes, and legal documents confirmed everything. The balance exceeded $500 million, along with several charitable foundations quietly funded from the account over the years. Many hospitals, scholarship programs, children's shelters, and food banks across the country had survived because of anonymous donations originating from Graham's investments. Victoria reviewed the history in stunned silence. The man she had mocked had financed thousands of children's surgeries without ever placing his name on a building. He had paid college tuition for students he would never meet. He had funded disaster relief while continuing to wear the same repaired coat. Meanwhile, she had mistaken humility for failure. As Graham prepared to leave, Victoria apologized sincerely. The words came slowly because pride had finally given way to genuine remorse. She admitted that she had judged him before learning anything about him. Graham accepted the apology politely but did not pretend the moment hadn't hurt. He explained that embarrassment fades, but public humiliation leaves invisible scars that often stay with people much longer than anyone realizes. He said the saddest part wasn't what happened to him. It was that younger employees had watched their leader teach them that appearance deserved more respect than character. Those words echoed through Victoria's mind long after Graham walked away. Over the following weeks, she couldn't escape the memory. She began observing her own workplace honestly for the first time. She noticed security guards greeting wealthy clients warmly while ignoring elderly visitors. She noticed receptionists becoming impatient with people wearing work uniforms. She noticed subtle habits that rewarded expensive appearances instead of genuine respect. Most painful of all, she realized those habits reflected the culture she herself had created. Determined to change, Victoria launched an entirely new customer care initiative. Every employee, including executives, attended empathy workshops focused on dignity, unconscious bias, and compassionate service. Performance evaluations began rewarding kindness alongside efficiency. Anonymous customer experience reviews carried greater weight than sales numbers. Many employees resisted initially, some considered the changes unnecessary. Then Victoria shared her own mistake publicly during a company meeting. She described exactly how she had judged a man by his coat. She admitted she had been completely wrong. The room remained silent because genuine accountability from powerful leaders was rare. News of the transformation gradually spread beyond the company. Customer satisfaction increased dramatically, employee morale improved, complaints declined. Something remarkable happened. People felt seen. Months later, Graham received an invitation to visit the bank again. This time, the purpose wasn't paperwork. Victoria wanted to introduce him to the staff as someone whose quiet integrity had transformed the institution. Graham almost declined because he disliked attention, but Clara encouraged him. She reminded her father that helping people sometimes meant allowing them to learn from mistakes. When they arrived together on a bright autumn afternoon, every employee welcomed them warmly. Clara wore a simple blue dress and proudly held her father's hand. She looked around the magnificent lobby and whispered that it felt different now. It truly did. There was warmth where cold efficiency had once ruled. A maintenance worker entered carrying cleaning supplies, and several executives greeted him by name. An elderly woman struggling with paperwork immediately received patient assistance. Nobody hurried her, nobody judged her. Victoria thanked Graham before the entire staff, explaining that true leadership begins with humility, not authority. She then surprised everyone by announcing a new annual scholarship honoring Eleanor Mercer, recognizing her lifelong volunteer work before her passing. The scholarship would support children raised by single parents pursuing higher education. Graham fought back tears. Eleanor had spent years helping families while expecting nothing in return. Knowing her kindness would continue touching future generations meant more to him than any financial fortune ever could. After the ceremony, Clara quietly removed a small sewing kit from her backpack. She had noticed a tiny loose button on Victoria's blazer. With a shy smile, she offered to fix it because her father had taught her that caring for people often begins with the smallest acts of kindness. Victoria knelt, smiling through tears, and accepted. As Clara carefully stitched the button into place, everyone nearby watched in silence. It wasn't about clothing anymore. It was about healing. It was about choosing compassion over pride. It was about a child demonstrating the grace many adults spend a lifetime trying to learn. Years passed, and Ashford National Bank became known not only for financial excellence but for treating every customer with equal dignity, regardless of appearance. Graham continued living in the same neighborhood, driving the same aging car, and wearing his beloved gray coat each winter until it finally became too fragile to repair. When Clara graduated from university, she carefully framed one small piece of that old coat alongside a photograph of her grandparents. Beneath it she placed a handwritten sentence that became her family's greatest treasure: "Character is the only wealth that grows when you give it away." Before this story ends, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment sharing a moment when someone looked beyond appearances and changed your life, or tell us what lesson touched your heart the most. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. The richest man in the bank walked through its doors wearing the poorest coat, but in the end, everyone discovered that the greatest fortune was never hidden inside a vault. It lived quietly inside a humble heart that refused to let success replace kindness, and inside a little girl who proved that even the smallest stitch of compassion can mend lives that pride has torn apart.